In 1930, Judge Joseph Crater stepped into a taxi in New York City and vanished. For decades, no one knew what happened, until 75 years later, a hidden letter surfaced, claiming to reveal where his body was buried. But what nobody talks about is this. Crater disappeared just as New York's judicial corruption was beginning to be dragged into the open. Summer of 1930. The Seabury Commission had just launched its investigation into Tammany Hall, the political machine that treated New York as its personal bank. Judge positions weren't always earned. Some were bought. In New York at that time, justice often came with a price. Joseph Crater was 41, ambitious, well-connected, and known for enjoying a lifestyle that raised questions about how far his official salary could stretch. He'd been appointed to the Supreme Court bench just 4 months earlier by Governor Franklin Roosevelt. At the time, persistent rumors claimed Crater had paid as much as $20,000 for that seat, the equivalent of hundreds of thousands today. The Seabury Commission had begun tearing into the network of kickbacks and bribes that kept Tammany Hall in power, and Crater, with his Tammany ties and sudden rise, fit the profile of exactly the kind of judge the investigators were looking at. August 6, 1930. That morning, Crater told his assistant to cash 2 checks totaling just over $5,000, roughly $85,000 today. He also had several briefcases of documents carried out of his office safe and taken to his apartment. According to later testimony, it was the first time his staff had seen him handle so many papers at once. Most retellings gloss over how unusual that day already looked. Large cash withdrawals and stacks of documents moved off-site, behavior that later raised questions about what he might have been preparing for. That evening, Crater had dinner at Billy Haas's Chop House with attorney William Klein and Sally Lou Ritz. They finished around 9:30 p.m. Witnesses recalled that Crater seemed nervous and unsettled during the meal. As they left, he hailed a taxi. He had tickets for a Broadway show that night, but he never made it there. Joseph Crater was never seen again.
Here's the infuriating part. Crater disappeared on August 6th, but nobody officially reported him missing until September 3rd. A sitting judge vanishes for 28 days and nobody raises an alarm. Why the delay? Simon Rifkind, an attorney and former aide to Senator Robert Wagner, a powerful political figure with ties to Tammany Hall, was the one who finally filed the missing person report. Some researchers, like Richard Toffel, have suggested that Rifkind may have spent those weeks quietly consulting with political allies before alerting the police. By the time the police finally stirred, nearly a month had passed. Apartments had been cleaned, witnesses had moved on, and whatever trail existed had been trampled into dust. By early 1931, investigators still had little to show for their efforts. And then in January, it wasn't the police, but Stella Crater who made the real discovery. Inside their apartment, she pulled open a drawer and uncovered envelopes bulging with $1,000 bills, stock certificates, and stacks of insurance policies, the kind of evidence detectives had somehow walked right past. The find made headlines and raised uncomfortable questions about what else might have been missed. How could investigators have overlooked it? Some critics blamed simple incompetence. Others suspected that, in the political climate of 1930 New York, there were powerful interests who preferred those documents to stay hidden. Years down the line, attorney and researcher Stephen Regal fought through Freedom of Information laws to access the original NYPD files. His research pointed to gaps and inconsistencies, interviews postponed, questions never pursued, and political names that appeared to receive unusually light scrutiny. Press coverage also shaped how the case was remembered. The New York Times splashed the mystery of the missing judge across its front pages, selling headlines, while the money trail was buried in back-page blurbs. Later critics asked, was that just news judgment or quiet protection for Tammany Hall? Consider this timeline. Crater disappeared just as the Seabury Commission was exposing how judgeships were being bought and sold. His absence removed a potential witness and possibly a liability. The timing, at the very least, raised questions that have never fully gone away. Decades later, a deathbed letter from 91-year-old Stella Ferrucci-Good yanked the case back into the spotlight, a confession she'd kept locked away until her final breath. In it, she claimed her late husband, a New York City police officer, had confessed that he and a partner killed Judge Crater on orders from political bosses. According to the letter, the body was buried beneath the Coney Island boardwalk near West 8th Street. The NYPD took the claims seriously enough to conduct an excavation at the site. They found nothing. But the letter stirred speculation about possible police involvement. If Ferrucci-Good invented the story, why reveal it only on her deathbed? And if she was telling the truth, why was there no physical evidence after 75 years? Look, I'm not claiming to have solved a 95-year-old mystery, but when you connect these dots, a pattern emerges. Crater was well aware that the Seabury Commission was circling Tammany Hall judges. On August 6th, he liquidated assets and gathered records, moves that later looked like he might have been preparing to cover his tracks. Some have speculated that others decided he knew too much to be left alive. That political machine that put Crater on the bench had enormous patronage and money at stake. His disappearance, if it was orchestrated, could have solved multiple problems, eliminating a liability, removing sensitive records, and creating a public mystery that overshadowed the corruption scandal. That month-long delay in reporting him missing, the investigation failures, the delayed discovery of key evidence, it's hard not to see the possibility of coordination. But in the end, I'll let you draw your own conclusions. Judge Crater's disappearance became a cultural touchstone. To pull a crater meant to vanish without a trace, and vaudeville and nightclub comedians built entire routines around the mystery. Over the decades, more than 16,000 tips poured in. None led anywhere. The case was officially closed in 1979, but never solved. Some argue that the jokes and headlines blurred the deeper issue, a justice system so compromised that a sitting judge could disappear, and those in power showed little urgency to find out why. The truth about Judge Crater wasn't just buried with his body. It was smothered by political deals, police inertia, and a city that preferred silence over scandal. Was he silenced by the corruption he served, or did he somehow escape the web he helped weave? After 95 years, we may never know for certain. What we do know is that in 1930s New York, justice wasn't just blind. Sometimes it vanished entirely. So what do you think? That 2005 letter claiming his body was buried under the Coney Island boardwalk, hoax or truth? Share your theory in the comments.